Hey, what's up everybody? My name's Ben.
I'm Luke.
And we're from Elite Welding Academy Cincinnati campus. Today we're back with another video on Elite Welding Academy's most frequently asked questions.
So today we're going to cover stick welding questions. So the first question.
I'm going to destroy the paper again, just rip it off, whatever.
What is stick welding?
There's three main types of welding. There's stick welding, there's TIG welding, and there's MIG welding. There's obviously different kinds, but those are the three main. Stick welding is the oldest, it's been around the longest. It's still very, very much used in the piping industry because it's quick, it's cheap, and it's relatively easy to learn.
A stick welder is you've got your battery, which is the welder, a negative coming off of it, and a positive in your rod in the positive end. When you make contact with the base metal, that throws the current through that loop, which then starts the process of welding.
So imagine you've ever jump-started a car and you touch the terminals together and you get that little spark. That's essentially what stick welding is. That spark is what controls and actually melts the metal so you can join the two pieces of base metal together. Next question. Why is stick welding still important to learn? All right, so like we talked about on the last question, stick welding's been around for almost 100 years, if not longer than that. I'm not sure on the date, but it's still very commonly used, especially in the piping industry, in the ironworking industry. Most of your bridges and buildings and things of that nature are going to be stick welded, mainly because it's probably the cheapest and fastest welding process that we currently use.
All right, moving down the list, question number 3.
You're having trouble with that, Luke.
I am.
Okay.
What would students stick weld on a job site? So from personal experience, when I got on a job site, anytime I did stick, it was anything structural and then a lot of gas lines.
What most of our students find themselves stick welding right out of weld school is typically going to be structural stuff. A lot of times it's hangers or actually constructing a pipe rack that the piping will go into. It's just, I know in my experience, Luke, correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of the welding that I've done out in the field has been TIG welding on pipe. Anytime I was doing a piece of angle iron or like some type of hanger or something like that, we always use 60-10 for stick welding.
On the contrary though, a lot of times when you're working on gas lines, they will want you to do stick rather than TIG.
A lot of times with gas lines, you're running into like maybe a deeper schedule or a thicker schedule piece of pipe, which means the wall of the pipe is thicker. So if you're welding something like that and you really need the penetration to get through something that's going to absorb a lot of that heat, you know, something thick, you want to use stick welding in that situation. So next question. Is stick welding dangerous? I would say stick welding is going to throw off the most amount of like spatter and sparks when you're actually performing the weld. MIG might be second place there. TIG doesn't really do much of that, so that's not really a concern with TIG, but with stick, there's definitely some concern there.
And I think with time, you can kind of get better with that, you know, body placement, learning where those sparks are going to fall. If you're going overhead, then maybe, you know, making sure your body's out from underneath it, so when it does fall, it's not landing in these crooks and cracks. So that's just something that comes with time.
Next question. What types of welding rods are used at EWA?
At EWA, we use 60-10 for the root and 70-18 for fill and cap.
Now with that said, we have other welding rods at every campus. By far the most commonly used is a 60-10 welding rod. A lot of times if you buy a welding machine at a local hardware store and grab some welds or grab some rods off their shelf, those are going to be 60-10 welding rods. 70-18, again, another very commonly used rod in the piping industry, but mainly in the process piping industry because that is an uphill rod only. 60-10 rods you can weld in any way, shape, or fashion. 70-18s are a little bit more limited to what they can do, but you can be more precise with it. So we stick to the two mains here. We try to cover the 60-10, which is a little bit more violent. It uses gas as a coverage for the weld puddle. 70-18, a little less dramatic, less sparks, and it actually uses flux to fully coat the weld. So by hitting those two rods, we kind of hit the two main category for all stick rods.
Why not stick weld everything? This is a good question. I know out in the field, some situations I was put in where like I was working for a pharmaceutical plant and they're huge on sanitation there. So having, you know, things like ends of rods and flux core all over the floor. That's something that they couldn't have. They needed to be able to maintain their sanitary environment while we come in there and do our work. So everything on that job was done in TIG.
Just to kind of give an example of some of my personal experience, the very first job site I ever got sent to once I graduated here at Elite was a chemical plant that couldn't even run the risk of having a spark exposure or anything like that. So everything was TIG welded. We didn't even do field welds on that job because it was so important to keep any type of heat or something, any source of ignition away from all the piping and all the piping systems on those facilities. So sometimes you'll find yourselves in situations where TIG is required for everything because of the limitation of safety. So that's pretty much going to wrap up this video. We really hope you guys are enjoying these videos. We're hoping to pump out a lot more of these to get a little bit more in-depth on these topics. So with that said, if you have any more questions about stick welding or maybe TIG welding or MIG welding or anything that has to do with welding or pipe fitting, please leave them in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to see more, hit us with that like, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.